Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host Anthony Rivardo. Once at the fireside, always at the fireside, my friends. Brought to you by Manscaped, our new sponsor. So go check out the promo code at the top on the graphics. Much love for helping us out if you're willing to, do so and really contribute back to the channel as we do this for you guys every single day. Elite level content. We got a really awesome interview coming over the weekend with 6th-round pick Kadarius Williams, Greedy Williams' brother, coming out of Oklahoma State, 25 years old, really great prospect who brings a lot of value to the special teams. And not only that, but as a developmental player in the secondary as a cornerback. So I'm really excited to get to know Kadarius and what he's bringing to Big Blue and his strengths and weaknesses and, what creates that and creates his motivation. But Anthony, my friend, how you doing today before we dive into our topic of the day?
I'm doing a lot better today. I had really bad throat infection. Apparently it wasn't strep. It was just really close to strep, some sort of tonsillitis. I don't know. It was terrible. I was bedridden for a couple of days, but I'm back now to keep providing the elite level content that you've all become accustomed to from Fireside Giants. I can't wait to talk to Kadarius Williams this weekend. I think that's going to be really exciting and interesting. Hopefully we'll get some good responses to some good questions, get a lot of good insight on who this player is that the Giants drafted in the 6th round. A lot of people think that it was a big steal for the Giants. Some people had him as a 4th round grade, and now the Giants ended up taking him all the way in the 6th round. So total steal, like Alex mentioned, a really good developmental piece. Was a Senior Bowl standout and guy who will probably stand out on special teams right away is what we're hearing for our research about Kadarius. So we're excited to talk to him about those things, talk to him about what he thinks he can do on special teams, where he thinks he fits in the Giants defense, what his expectations are for his rookie season and beyond. That's going to be really exciting. But of course, also excited for Azeez Ojulari, Leonard Williams, and this Giants defense, and excited to discuss that in this video today. So Alex, let's get into it.
Absolutely. Before we dive into this, have you guys been to New York City and just sat in traffic for hours? Because I live on 3rd Avenue and I sit here all day long and listen to cars honking at each other in a standstill. It's like nobody can move. Why are you honking all day long and blasting, and they're singing songs with their horns? It's unbelievable. So if you hear it in the background, it's because people have no patience, and I get it. I've been in traffic. Freaking sucks. And I know those people that live out on Long Island know what traffic is like as well. I know Anthony's had his fair share probably living in Long Island back in the day. Not fun. But today's episode is going to be about the dynamic defensive duo of Leonard Williams and Azeez Ojulari. And I'm really excited to talk about these two guys because I think the potential for those two players is immense as a pairing. And, let alone the individual statistics and attributes that they both contain. But when they work in tandem together, how successful can they be? What types of formations, what types of packages are they going to excel in? And how will Patrick Graham, our defensive coordinator, the magician, I like to call him, how is he going to use them and to maximize their potential? Because we know Azeez Ojulari is coming out of college, coming out of Georgia with 9.5 sacks last year. He ranked 1st in the SEC in sacks and forced fumbles with 4. So he had an absolute standout season as a senior last year. I don't even think he was a senior last year, but for Georgia, an absolute great player. The Giants are getting at 50th overall when we thought he might be going at 11 2 weeks ago. Ends up falling to 50. We get an extra 3rd round pick out of it. We drafted back. And now we have a great edge rusher presence. We had Lorenzo Carter who tore his Achilles, Ocean Ximenez who tore his labrum, and they were out for the full season. Azeez Ojulari has knee issues, quote unquote. Gettleman said, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I think for the most part, we should expect him to be coming in healthy, a really great player with fantastic bend, great speed off the line of scrimmage, and a knack for getting to the football. Not just the quarterback, but getting to the football and creating turnovers, which I'm super excited about, Anthony. When you look at Azeez Ojulari, how do you see him making an impact day one? Do you see him as more of a rotational guy, easing his way in as a 20-year-old pass rusher? Or do you see him day one, you are starting outside linebacker in the 3-4 scheme, and you're right next to Dexter Lawrence or Leonard Williams, and what is his impact there primarily as a pass rusher? You think he needs to work on his run game? I know you've done the film research, with your video, so go check that out too, because there was a fantastic video by Anthony there. But what do you see in Azeez Ojulari, and what do you expect from him right off the bat?
Yeah, so I did do the film research, and that video is on the channel, so go check that out. And I do have a pretty good understanding of his strengths and weaknesses. Now, in terms of what his day one impact will be, I think a lot of that is going to be dependent on rookie mini camps, training camp, and preseason, right? Because for most rookies, pretty much all rookies, because we can make the same discussion with Kadarius Tony. What will his day one impact be? What was Daniel Jones's day one impact? What was Dexter Lawrence's day one impact? What is Justin Fields' day one impact supposed to be? Apparently, he's not going to start the season. They're saying that they're going to ease him in, let Andy Dalton start, and just play him when they think he's fully ready, right? And that's usually the case with most rookies, and usually the case with second and third round rookies especially. They don't want to rush these guys in. They want to wait, let them develop, and make sure that they're fully ready before they go in, because they don't, like Matt Nagy said about Justin Fields, they don't want to ruin them before they even get the chance to be a good player. So for a guy like Azeez Ojulari, I don't think it's really the same principle because he's not a quarterback, but I do think that the Giants are likely to ease him into the starting lineup. But I do think by the end of the season, he is the full-time starting edge rusher over the left tackle. I think that he will become their number one edge rusher, their number one outside linebacker. I think that when you watch him play, you do see a guy who is not the greatest against the run. I think he's going to be about average in the NFL against the run like he was in college, so somewhere around average. But as a pass rusher, this kid has a knack for getting after the quarterback and, like Alex said, getting the football out of the quarterback's hands. He forces a lot of fumbles, and a lot of that will remind you of Osi Umenyiora, a guy who has a lot of speed, burst, and bend off the edge, a lot of flexibility, and doesn't always get to the back of the quarterback, but definitely gets his hand up to hit the quarterback as he's winding back to throw. Azeez does all those things, and he does them really well. He's a really, really good pass rusher, and I do think that day one, he should be the best pass rushing edge rusher that the Giants have. Now, I am very high on Lorenzo Carter. I think Lorenzo Carter is a really good player, but he's another player that's probably going to be eased back into the defense because he's coming off of a really significant injury. And same thing with Oshane Ximines. These are both guys who are going to be eased back into the defense. And Azeez Ojulari is going to be eased into the defense. So I think what you're going to see to start the season is a rotational approach from all of these edge rushers, outside linebackers. And then I think you're going to see whoever's playing the best will emerge as the full-time starter there, and then the other guys will continue to rotate in and out. I think the Giants did a really good job last year with their rotation. They rotated Cam Brown in, they rotated Carter Coughlin. This is after Oshane and Lorenzo went down. They even rotated guys like Kyler Fackrell. Once he came back, they rotated guys like Blake Martinez out to the edge. Tay Crowder rotated out to the edge pretty frequently as well. They just had a really nice rotation on the edge, kept defenses guessing, or offenses guessing rather, and really relied on the interior defensive line to apply the pressure. But now I think they're going to have more flexibility with the interior of their defense line and won't have to rely on them as much, because I think that Azeez Ojulari was absolutely a first-round talent that they stole in the second round. And this is a guy who will be a really good pass rusher and will be able to take the pressure off the interior defensive line and apply pressure from the edge by himself as a true pass rushing edge rusher. And I think that's going to be huge for the Giants. So his day one impact, I think he gets eased into the lineup, but I think pretty quickly he establishes himself as the best edge rusher on the roster, and I do think he has a really good rookie season and surprises a lot of those teams that passed on him all the way up to the 50th overall pick, where the New York Giants finally struck him and landed one of the steals of the NFL draft.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and when we're talking about Lorenzo Carter and Oshane Ximines, both guys missed time last year, pretty much the entire season. Lorenzo Carter looked like he was taking that big step forward that we desperately needed from that outside linebacker position. Going back to 2019, I don't remember if you remember that game against the Patriots, where Lorenzo Carter had like 2 sacks against Brady, and we were like, holy crap, this kid actually has some juice to him. He finished with like 7 sacks, 8 sacks on the year, and I'll tell you what, I think he can still be productive. Of course, Achilles injuries, tearing one especially, it's tough to come back from. But I think he'll at least be adequate, average. Oshane Ximines is another guy. I think there's going to be a really nice position battle that's going to kind of filter out during this training camp period, which I'm really excited to watch. Lorenzo Carter, Oshane Ximines, Azeez Ojulari. Competition brings out the best in all these players, and I think that's kind of what the Giants are trying to put forth, is bringing out the best in these players, and they have some good talent that has the potential to make an impact moving forward. But I'll say this. I think Azeez Ojulari is a starter day one. I think, yes, they'll probably rotate him in as they use more 4-man rotations if they're going to do something like that. If they have a Fede Odenigbo, who really would have been second on the Giants in pressures last year if he was on the team. He is a very good player, and I'm really excited to see what he has to offer. So maybe Azeez Ojulari is a starter day one, but it's going to be a rotational approach. They're going to be putting heavier guys in there, changing their formations, disguising coverages, doing a lot of creative things to keep offenses on their toes. So that's what excites me the most, because the Giants didn't ignore the pass rusher position this year at all. They really went and got Azeez. They got a Fede. and I'm excited to see what they can do there. But the duo of Leonard Williams and Azeez Ojulari long term, Anthony, I think could be special. We've seen great duos in the past, Yuman Yora and Justin Tuck and JPP and Michael Strahan. We've seen some phenomenal pairings in the past. And when you have a pairing in a duo, it commands a lot of attention from the offensive line. It forces them to shift left. Or let's say you have Azeez and Leonard Williams on the left side of the line of scrimmage. The offensive line has to shift that direction. You have to provide help there with a tight end if those guys are both playing to the peak of their abilities. Now, we know what Azeez brings. We know what Leonard Williams brings. 11.5 sacks last year, 62 pressures. He was in the top 3 in interior defensive linemen specifically in the NFL. I'm excited to see what they can do together because we know that Leonard Williams is one of the best interior defenders at soaking up double teams. When he does that, it allows Azeez Ojulari to have 1v1, just outside linebacker in general, to have 1v1 matchups against tackles. And tackles, especially offensive tackle in the NFL, that's a position of weakness. There's a reason those guys get paid so much is because there's not a lot of great talent at that spot specifically. So against other teams in the NFL, our schedule specifically, the Eagles, Lane Johnson always injured. Their tackle's kind of, not the best after Lane. Washington, they have some issues there as well. The Cowboys always seem to be strong. Tyrone Smith is always missing games, though, so that's always a position where, it could be a hit or miss on any given week. The Giants need to have a strong pass rush, especially with good offensive lines, in the NFC East. And I think that the Giants put together a really great duo of Azeez Ojulari and Leonard Williams. Anthony, how do you see them working in tandem? And do you think that Azeez is going to feed off of Leonard Williams? Do you think that that will be something that the Giants try to do? Or do you think they'll have Azeez kind of moving both sides? He might play more with Dexter Lawrence. Another guy that soaks up a lot of double teams. Who do you think they'll try to mix and match with? Do you think they'll just be moving guys constantly and rotationally approaching this?
Okay, so since it's Patrick Graham's defense, I do assume that they're going to move guys around all the time because he did that last year. You had Leonard Williams primarily lined up as the 3 tech, over the guard. Sometimes you had him lined up as a 5 tech on the outside shoulder of the tackle playing edge rusher. Like, they lined him up all over the place. Sometimes you had him as a 0 tech, 1, 4-eye. They moved him all over the defensive line, and I expect them to do the same thing. You saw Lorenzo Carter line up over the left tackle, line up over the right tackle. You see that rotation a lot. But primarily where Azeez Ojulari should line up, I assume, is over the left tackle, playing right outside linebacker, edge rusher, because that's what he played in college, and that's where Lorenzo Carter plays, so that is your number 1 edge rusher lines up over the left tackle. And like I said, I assume that, maybe he'll start off on the other side of the field, but I do think that he gets that full-time starting role as the number 1 edge rusher and lines up over the left tackle primarily this season. So I think that's going to be huge because you have him lining up over the left tackle and then lining up over the left guard as your right defensive end, your right 3 tech. That player is Leonard Williams. That's your primary pass rushing interior defensive lineman. That's going to be Leo, and you're going to have Leo here, and then right above him, you're going to have Azeez Ojulari. And that's going to be really good because you're going to get your best speed rusher and your best power rusher right on the same vein. So you're going to get the power from the interior and the speed off the edge, which is pretty much the exact combo that you want from your defensive front. You want a nice blend of power and speed, and you would ideally like them to be blended on one side of the line to really just beat up that guard and tackle combo. And I think that's really what you're going to see there. And I do think you're going to see, a lot of movement. I think you're going to see times where you're going to see Azeez just line up as an off-ball linebacker right over the guard. And then you're going to have Leonard Williams kick out the tackle, and then you're going to see some stunts and some twists. And I think they're going to get really creative with stuff like that. Even when Azeez is over the offensive tackle, on the outside shoulder of him playing the edge rusher role, I think you'll see him rush the interior, and you'll see Leo Williams go around the edge, and you'll see all those stunts. And I think that's going to be huge because those are 2 really talented pass rushers, one from the interior, one from the edge, that can do a lot of things and are very versatile. And once they start twisting and they start doing their stunts, offensive linemen are going to be really confused, and they're going to have a really tough time defending that. Really good power rusher, really good speed rusher. That combo is going to be lethal, deadly for opposing offensive linemen to try and block against. So I think that's going to be huge for the Giants and defense in general, just having that combo right there, having that synergy that balance of power and speed on the same side of the line, and having two really talented players as Aziz comes into his own. He's got a couple really good pass rush moves. He's really got the dip and the rip. He's really got that cross chop that we love to talk about because there's a few huge highlight plays that he made with it. All that speed and burst and bend, all that stuff we talk about with Aziz. You combine that with all of the power, the bull rush, the club move that Leonard Williams has, and you're talking about a full array of pass rush moves going after the left tackle and the left guard on any given Sunday from those two combining together. That's really exciting for me as a Giants fan, as all Giants fans. As Patrick Graham looks at the personnel that he has on this defense, that's going to be exciting for him. He can get really creative with the way that he schemes those two to play in tandem together. This Giants defense, man, it was already really good last year. It's only going to get better now that we have a true pass rusher who can be a number one every down edge rusher for us on this team with Azeez Ojulari.
I've never heard more facts in my entire life, sir. And I just have to say something about Azeez Ojulari that I just stumbled upon. And this is what Andrew Thomas had to say about Azeez. And, we hear about the tangible traits that Azeez brings to this team, but something we haven't heard much about is the intangible traits. His character. What is he like as a person? What is he like behind the scenes? What is he like in the locker room? That's not something that we've heard much about. And I'll tell you something. I read this quote, and it makes so much sense, man. I'm starting to really like Azeez Ojulari even more and more and more every time I read more about him. And this is what Andrew Thomas, his former teammate at Georgia, had to say about him. I think he has all the intangibles, like he's fast, he's strong, has good weight, but personally, the thing that I feel makes him different from the other guys is his heart and how he plays the game. Azeez, he'll run through a brick wall for his teammates. That's how he plays the game. That touches my heart because, looking at the Giants during the Ben McAdoo era, it was always a me first. Everyone had their cliques. Everybody was doing their own thing, talking crap about each other in the locker room to the freaking media. Eli Apple's mom was, the first to go and throw anyone under the bus. And you know what? This feels more like a family. This team feels like a family. It feels like they all sit around at the dinner table on Thanksgiving Eve and they're enjoying a fat turkey leg and some cranberry sauce, and they're talking shop and just talking crap and shooting the shit. You know what I mean? That's what gets me so excited about this Giants team, is that it's a family, and they all want to win. They all care about each other, and they'll run through a brick wall if they have to, and they have their fearless and stoic leader and head coach Joe Judge. That is what makes me excited about this Giants team. It's the feeling of family. It's the feeling of togetherness. And even when they were losing last year, that team did not give up. That team fought. Even when they were the last place team in the NFC freaking East, the worst division I've ever seen in my freaking ever watching football, they didn't stop fighting. They said, we can make the playoffs. This division might be a piece of absolute garbage. Might as well throw it in the recycling bin, but we can still make the playoffs. And I'm going to push. I'm going to fight for it. And Azeez is one of those guys that's going to come in and say, I'm not looking at the freaking the win-loss column. I'm looking at how can we get better tomorrow. How can we get better today, let alone tomorrow. So that's what excites me about Azeez Ojulari. And then you have guys like Leonard Williams, another leader. His energy that he brings to the field, a monster. You see the Instagram videos of him. He's hanging out with like monkeys and tigers and stuff, and he just has this like crazy lavish life. But when he's on the football field, that guy's an animal. He is a tiger. He's big cat. You know what I mean? He is able to turn on that switch that makes him elite. And I think Azeez Ojulari, being that teammate that will run through a brick wall, they're gonna get along so well, and they're gonna challenge each other to get better. And I think iron sharpens iron, and you have Azeez Ojulari going against Andrew Thomas in practice. Iron sharpens iron. We're gonna see this team grind each other to get better. And I think that's what excites me about this team. They're a family, but they also want to be the best. So, call me Homer Simpson, but I swear I think this team has something special in them in terms of characteristics, intangibles, and tangible traits. And Anthony, how do you feel about the Giants right now in terms of just where they're going emotionally, and just the leadership-wise and experience? Does it feel different to you, heading into the 2021 season?
It absolutely does feel different, and I'll speak on the La Familia aspect that Alex just mentioned. We do see that. That is absolutely evident this whole offseason. We've seen the players just coming together and recruiting to get guys like Adoree Jackson, Kenny Galladay onto this roster. Every time a significant player or even insignificant player is released from a team, I swear we see a Giants player tweet at them and try and get them on the team. The latest being Kerryon Johnson. Is Kerryon Johnson going to fill a position of need for us? No, we just drafted Gary Brightwell. We have Devontae Booker, and of course our starting running back is Saquon Barkley. But But Kerryon Johnson's a good running back, so you got Darius Slayton tweeting out, imagine Kerryon Johnson and Saquon Barkley already doing some recruiting. And, Giants players have been doing that all season long, that familial aspect, right? They're just combining together and combining for the greater good of the team. And then, of course, even more so, you're seeing the brotherhood aspect of Daniel Jones was just out playing basketball with Darius Slayton, David Sills, and a couple other guys. They just shoot hoops and they play basketball and they're just good friends. And then you see every weekend, Saturday night, blow off some steam. It's Daniel Jones and Will Hernandez after a hard week of workouts. They're going out to the club, smoking cigars and having some drinks nearly every single weekend, like they're best friends, like they're college brothers in a frat, like they're just brothers. That family aspect is what we're seeing from all of the players on this Giants roster. And of course, you mentioned leadership. This is a top to bottom thing. This starts with Joe Judge. I'm the number one leader of the Joe Judge fan club. Whether that's self-proclaimed, I've gotten a lot of support from people who agree with me. I love Joe Judge. I will literally die on a hill for Joe Judge, and I think that he has been phenomenal for the Giants and the culture that he has instilled for the Giants. We had a culture before with Dave Gettleman, Pat Shurmur, right? What they were trying to build was very different. They were getting in a lot of veteran players to come coach the younger players, and they were trying to do stuff like that and trying to have more of a guiding presence over the players, right? I feel like that's what it was. They were trying to guide this young team. Now I think the flip has been switched. Now you have the young team full of young leaders stepping up, combining together, being a family and just building this team together, whether it's through recruiting, whether it's through staying together after practice and building their chemistry together, whether it's hanging out off the field, becoming better friends, becoming better players together, and building that chemistry through that. I think that's what you're seeing from this young group of guys and all of the leaders that we have on this roster. Daniel Jones is a phenomenal leader, as we've heard. I think that Azeez Ojulari is going to be a phenomenal leader. Big Cat Leonard Williams is a phenomenal leader. Dexter Lawrence, phenomenal leader. Jabril Peppers, can't forget him, phenomenal leader. Logan Ryan is that veteran, but still a good leader who's been hanging out with the younger guys and actually, recruiting really well and being relatable, and not just this old guy like Antoine Bethea, who none of the players seem to be friends with at all, right? You have friends all over this roster, and they're not cliques. They're just friends. Everyone is friends with each other, and I think it's awesome. And, we talked to Afadio Denable, a great, high character guy, good leader, wants to come in really here and guy. Make a good impact on this team and make friends with these players. He's already been working out with Leonard Williams, Nate Solder, already becoming friends with these guys. Like, this roster is just so connected. There's so much synergy, so much chemistry amongst all of these players. And just this sense of, from the outside looking in at least, this sense of brotherhood and longevity and chemistry. And I know all of that just really excites me. I look back in the past, what we had in, the 2016 season, the Giants made the playoffs. Ben McAdoo was the head coach. Was that team connected the way that this one is? No, and you really saw them fall apart after the media ripped us to shreds for the boat trip incident, right? The media ripped us to shreds, and then the team just fell apart in the playoffs. There really wasn't any synergy. There wasn't any chemistry amongst those players. There were just talented players playing football, but they didn't really all seem to have the same common goal and purpose. Now I feel like it's different under Joe Judge. I feel like we all see this common goal and purpose, and all these players fighting and working really hard to achieve that goal together. Not just as individuals, but together they're all fighting to achieve this, and I think that's super exciting, and you hear a lot of scripted responses from these guys in their interviews, but that's because they're all on the same page and they're all working together and they all have bought into the culture and they're all trying to make this culture work, and they know it's a winning culture, and the Giants are going to be back to winning football soon enough, and I can't freaking wait, and I can't wait to see all these players hug each other and embrace each other as brothers when they do it, hold up the trophy together. I can't wait for that day. I know it's going to happen soon enough, and I'm going to give a lot of credit to Joe Judge when it does happen.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And, I want to jump into some questions from you guys on Twitter. But one thing I do want to hit on before we go onto that next topic is one thing in specific. I've never seen so much public support for Kadarius Tony from other teams. When is the last time that we drafted a player that other teams came out publicly and said we were praying he dropped to us? The Green Bay Packers apparently were dying to draft him. The Jacksonville Jaguars and Urban Meyer literally was like, I was heartbroken that he didn't fall a couple spots to us at 25. When's the last time we saw teams coming out and publicly stating their, dismay for not landing a player that the Giants got at 20? it's pretty special. And I'll tell you what, when guys are saying stuff like that, it makes me think that we may have walked away with one of the better draft picks too in the first round, aside from adding the first round value. And I just asked a question on Twitter, Anthony. I'll have you answer this too. Apparently Philadelphia was Philadelphia leapfrogging the Giants. Giants were livid that they lost out on Devonta Smith. But I think they might have walked away with an even better haul in terms of Tony, a first-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and a fifth-round pick. I think I would have taken that over Devonta Smith any day, and I love Devonta Smith. You know this. Like, I was a big fan of him. But do you think that was the right move? Because we've been begging for this guy to trade down for ages, and finally he did it, and I think he knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I absolutely think that was a blessing in disguise for the Giants. They were livid. They wanted Devonta Smith really badly. They didn't get him. Instead, they traded down. They got an additional first-round pick in next year's draft. Gave themselves a lot of insurance for the future with a lot of things. We've discussed that before. That was a huge haul for the Giants. They got a first, they got a fourth, and they got a fifth. And, they moved back 9 spots and still landed Kadarius Tony, who was looked at around the league as a first-round talent. You had some random analysts who think that they know everything saying that Kadarius Tony was a reach at 20. It's not a reach if you traded down, got an additional first-round pick, and gained all this value from that trade down and selected a really good player. It's just not a reach. Plus, he was going to go at 25 to Jacksonville, and he was going to go at 29 to Green Bay if Jacksonville didn't take him. So it wasn't a reach. The Giants drafted him at the exact spot they were supposed to, and they got a really talented, dynamic playmaker with Kadarius Tony. I think that was an amazing pick by them. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. And I think that you look at him and you look at what the Giants yielded in that trade down scenario. And I think that this is a blessing in disguise for them. They didn't get Devonta Smith, okay. But would we have rather gotten Devonta Smith and then watched Philadelphia get this huge haul of draft picks and draft a really talented player at 20? That would have been like, oh, we got Devonta Smith, but man, look at all that Philadelphia just got from that trade down. That could have been us. Well, that was us. We got that trade down. They got Devonta Smith. Let's see how he pans out. People have question marks about him. He's 166 pounds entering the NFL. He's not going to be a day one impact for them with that weight, especially because he's going to have to be their number one receiver, and he's going to have to be their X receiver and go up against press coverage, something he struggles with because of his size and weight. He needed to be a Z receiver, a number 2 receiver in somebody's offense. Would have been a perfect fit for us. Kind of sucks for Devonta Smith. Would have been a perfect fit for us for him to go to the Giants, be that Z receiver opposite of Kenny Golladay. Would have been really good for him. Instead, he's going to have a lot of weight to carry on his shoulders with a struggling quarterback and Jalen Hurts in his second season in Philadelphia. Plus, he's got to be that number 1 receiving threat. That's a really tough situation for Devonta Smith. I think that the Giants had traded down. Blessing in disguise, got so much out of that trade down. And I absolutely believe that Kadarius Tony can have a huge impact and be one of the best receivers in this league. I think he's a phenomenal talent. I'm so happy with the trade down.
Yeah, the guy also breaks ankles too. He literally did some crazy move and broke someone's leg from
literally broke someone's leg from taking that.
Literally broke someone's leg, and he looked like he broke his own leg in the process. The guy can contort his body like I don't even know. It's just ridiculous. He's like, what are those people that do that? I don't know, yoga master. I don't know, people that.
Contortionist sort of thing.
There you go. A contortionist. Yeah, he's like doing the whole thing. So that's Kadarius Tony for you, the contortionist. I think that's when I start calling him on the field. But let's move on to some questions from you guys on Twitter. First one is Kevin McManus, my guy from Ireland. And he has a very good question, Anthony. Inside linebacker, starting next to Martinez. Does Reggie Ragland get the first crack? I personally think that Reggie Ragland's a cheaper replacement for David Mayo. I think Tate Crowder's getting the first crack because I think Tate Crowder has a little bit, more potential, more upside. Second year in the NFL, has some experience. He looked decent when he was on the field. And I think he has some untapped potential as a coverage linebacker. And I think Reggie Ragland's more of a knockoff Blake Martinez for the most part. I think he's David Mayo's replacement. I think he's a run stopper. He's that guy you want in case Martinez misses any time for whatever reason. I think we keep our eyes on Tate Crowder. I think he's our man right now since we didn't draft another linebacker. I think Tate Crowder's the guy that we're going to roll with as our second guy. What do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analysis of Reggie Ragland. I think he's the replacement for David Mayo. He's going to be that secondary run-stuffing guy opposite of Blake Martinez. And I do think Tate Crowder is a name to keep an eye on. I think he should be that number 2 linebacker because he showed a lot as a rookie. As a 7th-round rookie, he exceeded all expectations. And he's got that speed, athleticism to be that coverage guy that the Giants don't really have in their linebacker core, but they haven't really asked any of them to be that guy because they haven't had one, and they don't necessarily need one in the scheme, but that's neither here nor there. I think that Tate Crowder has far more upside than a guy like Reggie Ragland, but I'm going to throw out one surprise name maybe here for a secondary off-ball linebacker. I'm going to throw out Lorenzo Carter. I think coming off of an injury, a good way to ease him back into the defense would be having him play off-ball. Now, if you actually look at Lorenzo Carter's previous grading from PFF and previous film work and stats, he's actually been pretty good in coverage when he's been given the opportunity. He's had a limited number of snaps as an inside linebacker, and he's kind of been impressive in those snaps. And the Giants just got Azeez Ojulari. He's going to be, probably your primary edge rusher. Would make sense coming off of this injury, not having Lorenzo just beat down offensive tackles time after time after time, but maybe moving him into the off-ball linebacker role, seeing what he can do there, putting him in coverage as a blitzing inside linebacker, and a coverage guy with all that speed and range that he has. I want to see that happen, and I think that we will see it happen. So that's my name to keep an eye on for the second inside linebacker position, whether that's full-time or just worked in there as a rotational piece. I think you're going to see that more frequently as the Giants get really creative with all of the pass rushers that they have. And again, Lorenzo Carter is a blitzing inside pass rusher. That sounds phenomenal. Imagine him doing a swim move on a center and then getting to the quarterback in 0.5 seconds. I could see that happening. I think that's a really good name that could totally emerge as a secondary inside linebacker next to Blake Martinez.
Very interesting, huh? I didn't even think of Lorenzo Carter as a potential option for them, but I'll tell you what, I could see them testing him out there. I think Tate Crowder's our guy. I think Reggie Ragland, they signed him for a veteran minimum, and they saved about $2.5 million by cutting David Mayo and just moving over to Reggie Ragland, so I think that was more of a cap savings scenario, and Reggie can fill that run-stopping role pretty adequately, at least if Blake Martinez goes down. So I think that's where they were going with it. Cap savings, you still get a decent player with some upside, who's another Alabama product that Nick Saban probably can vouch for, and Joe Judge knows from his time a couple years ago. So I think that's where they're going with that. Let's move on to the next question, my friends. Let's go to Randy Guardiola. What does Daniel Jones have to do to be considered the quarterback of this team going forward, and what would be considered unacceptable from him and make the team move on? That's a really tough question, and it's a pretty loaded question too. So what does Daniel Jones have to do to be considered the quarterback of this team going forward? I think that he has to cut down on the turnovers, and he has to maximize the weapons that the Giants are giving him. Of course, the offensive line plays a major part in that, but I think there's no excuse for him to have any less than 20 touchdowns next year. Any less than 20 touchdowns, and I'm going to be very concerned. There's no excuse for him to have any less than 20 touchdowns, and there's no excuse for him to, throw over 10 interceptions and fumble the ball over 10 times. He should have, I think, 12 to 15 turnovers in total or lower. That should be the number that I'm looking at. 12 to 15 or lower than that is what I'd be content with. Anything lower than that, I'd be ecstatic about. Because he still is a young quarterback, and now he's going to have his first opportunity with all these weapons to capitalize on. But with what the Giants provided him, I feel good that he should be able to have 20, 25 plus touchdowns this upcoming season, and also be able to use that zone, that read option, to his advantage and really confuse defenses. I think the play calling is a big factor, but we need to see the factors around him also contribute toward his success. He can't do it alone. The play calling needs to be solid. The offensive line needs to at least give him some time in the pocket, and no drops from receivers. The Giants had so many drops last year. The factors around him need to be adequate for him to take that step forward. And if they are all adequate and he struggles, that's a different story. But if they're all working well around him and he's getting it done, I think we have our guy. So that's kind of how I view this. Unacceptable for him would be, reversing the trend with the turnovers. He did pretty well last year. He finished the season 4-2. He only had like 3 turnovers in the last 6 games or something, like some really crazy number like that showed insane development. So I think that's where I'm looking at, is the turnovers need to cut down, the production on offense needs to go up, and a lot of factors around him that I can't, you have to factor into it, but it's just a hard question to answer, honestly.
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer, but for me, Daniel Jones, if he wants to establish himself as the guy for the future, make the playoffs this year, win football games, be a winning quarterback this year. Your record is 8-18 all time. get that up, win some games, get us into the playoffs. The Giants went out there in free agency in the draft. They spent a lot of money and a lot of draft capital getting as many weapons as possible for Daniel Jones. You got Kadarius Tony, Kyle Rudolph, Kenny Galladay. Like, you got it all now. It should all be put together. You could just argue that the one thing that he doesn't have is a great offensive line. Giants expect this offensive line to take a lot of strides this year with the young guys that they have. Let's hope that they do. If not, that's going to be the one excuse that Daniel Jones gets. But really, he should overcome that with all the weapons that he has. And, for him to, let's say a stat line for him to be established as a guy. Well, he's going to have to score more than 20 touchdowns. He only threw 11 touchdown passes. And that last year, I didn't think that was a very good number. Let's see him throw over 20 this year. Let's see him keep the interceptions at 10 or less. And let's see him get into single-digit fumbles. Because last year he had fumbled 11 times. The year before that it was like 18 or something. Let's see it single digit at least. Okay, 9 is a lot anyway, but let's see that get to like a 7. A number like 7. That's realistically that's where he should be at this year with his development and the fumbles. I want to see better pocket presence. I want to see smarter reads, and I want to see more scoring. I want to see this team score more points. It was an abysmal last year, this offense. I want to see Daniel Jones lead this team to score more points and ultimately win more games. Make it to the playoffs. Establish yourself. Have a good season as a quarterback and make the playoffs. And I'll say, okay, you can lead this team to the playoffs. You can maybe lead this team to a championship in a couple of years. I want to see you continue to develop as a franchise quarterback. That's what I want to see. What will make me say I don't want to see him as a quarterback anymore? We finish with a top 10 pick again. You have to look at the quarterback. That's got to be an indictment on the quarterback this year. If they finish with a top 10 pick and they have all these weapons and all this talent on defense, there has to be a problem at the quarterback position, and you got to make a change with a top 10 pick plus a pick that we got from Chicago. You can trade up and get your guy, right? So we finished with a top 10 pick. I'm probably ready to move on from Daniel Jones because I'm going to assume that also entails he didn't fix a turnover problem because turnovers are the biggest indicator to losses, right? So if if we have a top 10 pick, I'm going to assume he's probably career high in interceptions, and he's probably not fixed the fumble problem, and he probably doesn't have 20 touchdown passes. So those are my thresholds to meet, and if he doesn't meet them, I'm assuming we're going to, bottom out, and I'm going to be ready to move on. So he's got to fix that turnover problem. He's got to score more points. That's the number one thing, and the Giants have to win this year with him as the quarterback. They have to make the playoffs for him to truly establish himself as a future or current franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good opinion on Daniel Jones' future and what we need to see from him moving forward. Let's move on to the next question, my friends. Do you think that Kenny Galladay, this is from Michael Gordon, by the way, shout out to Mike, he's always in the chats, consistent OG guest. Do you think Kenny Galladay is the best wide receiver in the NFC East? Pretty tough question. Do I think that he's it's tough, man, because you got Amari Cooper. So. Yeah, you got Amari Cooper. That's the guy, Amari Cooper.
He's one of the best route runners in the NFL.
Tough.
Amari Cooper is dynamic. He's my pick.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with that too. I think it probably goes Amari Cooper, Kenny Galladay, and then Terry McLaurin, and then Devonta Smith. That's probably what we're looking at right now in terms of best player. I mean, CeeDee Lamb.
I'm going to put CeeDee Lamb ahead of Devonta Smith personally. But,
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think right now we can say CeeDee Lamb's above Devonta Smith just because of the experience factor. But I think Kenny Galladay definitely in the mix. He's probably in the number 2, which is not a bad thing to be in your division because the Giants
got to remember Curtis Samuel's in this division now too. So
true, yeah, he's in Washington.
I'm probably putting him ahead of Devonta Smith as well. Curtis Samuel's a pretty good player. That's close because I like CeeDee Lamb a lot, but that's close. Yeah. Kenny Galladay though, I think he's number 2. I think he's number 2 receiver, but Amari Cooper is legitimately a top 7 receiver in the NFL in my eyes. So
yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so there's your answer. Kenny Galladay's up there. He's not the best, but he's top 3.
Shout out Michael Gordon.
To the next question. Yeah, shout out Michael Gordon. And here's from Curtis. Do you think our secondary has the potential to be the best in the league? I do. I 100% think we have the best. We have probably the second best grouping of personnel, aside from Denver, who has Fuller, Patrick Surtain, Ronald Darby. Sick group of players over in Denver. Justin Simmons. Yeah, exactly. So they got a sick group of players. But we got James Bradbury, we got Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinney, Jabril Peppers, and Logan Ryan, and Darnay Holmes and Aaron Robinson now from UCF. So we also have a very strong group of players. Ultimately, it comes down to health. As long as our guys can stay healthy and on the field, we will have a very good secondary. I think easily will be top 5 if we're healthy. Could be the best in the NFL though. I think that we have that potential.
Yeah, the potential's there. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, It's random league. There's so much randomness that goes into the NFL seasons. But for the Giants, look at the trio of safeties that they have with Xavier McKinney, Jabril Peppers, and Logan Ryan. And then you look at all the depth that we have at corner now. You have James Bradbury as your number one corner. Opposite of him, you have Adoree Jackson. In the slot, you have a nice competition of Aaron Robinson and Darnay Holmes, which are going to be really good depth. And, of course, just as a general depth in the secondary, you still got Kadarius Williams, still got Isaac Yiadom, who I think is a good depth piece. Still got Julian Love, who can play pretty much any position in the secondary. So you got a lot of depth, and you have a lot of top-tier talent. So, yeah, of course, we could be the best secondary in the league. That's not the expectation, because you never want to make that expectation, but should be top 5. That's a reasonable expectation. I think the Giants' secondary should be one of 5 best units in the NFL and could absolutely be the best. And really excited to see what they put together on the field this year because, it's a talented unit, and I love watching good safeties and good corners go out there and lock down opposing receivers, which is going to be necessary because we just mentioned on the last question, there's a lot of wide receiver talent in the NFC East, so we're going to need the secondary to be top tier as we expect them to be.
Absolutely, and shout out to our guy Julian Love, who always gets overlooked. No one ever mentions his name, but I love Julian Love because he is the perfect utility player. He is a guy who can come in and play slot corner, outside corner, free safety, strong safety. He does it all. And I love Julian Love for that utility purpose. He's like, a utility player in baseball. He's able to come in and play everything at an average level at least. So I like that a lot about him. Shout out to him for being an integral depth piece to this unit. The Giants, this is the deepest I've seen the Giants in terms of depth in a long, long time. When's the last time that we could say we have depth at any position? You know what I mean? Now we have depth in the secondary. We have depth at running back. We have depth at wide receiver. I mean, think about our wide receiver list for goodness sakes. It's unbelievable. Yeah, last year I just tweeted out this morning. Last year we had Sterling Shepard. We had C.J. Board, Dante Pettis, and we had Golden freaking Tate and Darius Slayton. Those were our 5 receivers. This year we have Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Kadarius Tony, who's taking over Golden Tate snaps. Thank the good Lord for that. You still got Darius Slayton. You got John Ross now, and you still got C.J. Board and Dante Pettis. So pretty damn good group of guys. Then you got Kyle Rudolph and Evan Ingram, of course. And every time I put Evan Ingram in anything, people freak out. So we have Kyle Rudolph, okay? No Evan Ingram, we have Kyle Rudolph. And he can catch passes, so I'm happy about that. And let's go on to, this will be our last question. This is from the Yankees and Giants 4 on Twitter. I'd like to hear about the future of the safety position, especially if we ever lose Peppers, because this is his final year in his contract for the Giants. And, can we expect him to be back next season? Probably. I think they're going to extend him. How do you get rid of pretty much your leader on defense? He is arguably the most important part of that defensive backfield in terms of his youth, his application, because he can play multiple positions, and he's aggressive, and he brings that leadership and energy to that defense that we desperately need. When the Giants don't have Jabril Peppers on the field, they're not as good. That's a simple factor. They are just simply not as good. And I think Jabril Peppers, he's a great run stopper. He's developed really nicely in that category. He's really developed nicely in terms of covering tight ends and running backs. And I think that's just where he thrives. The role that they've put him in at strong safety, he's so good there, and I really would hate to lose him. But if they did end up moving on from him, they'd probably draft somebody next year, a strong safety. Maybe they put Julian Love there. I don't exactly know what they would do. Maybe they sign somebody. They don't have a ton of money next offseason, but I think maybe they would go and try and draft somebody. They have 2 first-round picks, and they still have their second-round picks and whatnot. So I feel pretty good about that. What do you think?
I think the Giants should extend Jabril Peppers as soon as possible because you should do it now before his price presumably skyrockets after the season. Got him on his 5th-year option. I think that's awesome, but you should extend him because if he has another really good season like the one he just had, his price is going to be really expensive next offseason. So they should absolutely re-sign him. And in terms of the general future of the secondary, the safety trio that we have, I think you do see Xavier McKinney move into Logan Ryan's role of being that free safety eventually, even though I think that he's better as a box strong safety, which is why I like that we have that trio. We have a dependable free safety, we have a really good box safety, strong safety with Jabril Peppers, and then you have Xavier McKinney as well. I think what I really like about this secondary is you got that free safety in Logan Ryan. You can rely on him to cover the left side of the field. Then the right side of the field, you take Jabril Peppers, you put him in the box, play that big nickel, that nickel linebacker role, the money backer role when we're in the nickel formation. Then you have Xavier McKinney as your deep, strong safety. And I think that is just the perfect trio right there, because you got a guy who's like a linebacker but has the speed and coverage skills of a safety. And then you have another guy who's kind of like a linebacker, just a little bit smaller, has the speed and coverage skills of a safety at strong safety. Then you have like a true free safety in Logan Ryan. I think that's a perfect trio that the Giants are going to recognize and probably want to keep around as long as possible, which is why they extended Logan Ryan. But Logan Ryan's getting up there in age. If he does move on, it'll be interesting to see where they place these guys. I assume Xavier McKinney moves over to free safety, unless they move on from Jabril Peppers and they replace with a new free safety and they have Xavier McKinney move into that strong safety role. That's the other avenue that they could go with this. But right now, that trio is in a perfect position to succeed and to really be the glue that holds this defense together.
Absolutely, guys. I think that's a great way to put it as well. But thank you so much for tuning in to Fireside Giants. Once at the fireside, always at the fireside, my friends. And shout out to the Manscaped, our new sponsor. And if you're going to use the code 20% off, I'll throw in a free Fireside Giants t-shirt for you guys. Just DM me on Twitter and show me your confirmation email, and I will take care of you. Don't worry about that. And much love for supporting the podcast. As always, we work really hard. We have exclusive stuff coming on this weekend with Kadarius Williams. We're going to hit up agents and stuff, trying to get some more players. If we can get Kadarius Tony on, by the graces of the football gods, it would be an absolute freaking insane opportunity for us. So we're going to work on it, you guys. We're going to do our best, and obviously, you'll be here to enjoy it with us as well. So thank you so much for tuning in to Fireside Giants. Make sure to subscribe below on YouTube and turn on notifications on all platforms: YouTube, Apple, Spotify. Much love as always, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.